Jake Morrison stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. The blue light from the star maps cast strange shadows across his face as he worked late into the ship's night cycle. Around him, the research vessel Discovery hummed quietly through space, carrying its crew of scientists and explorers toward the next system on their survey mission. As the ship's chief cartographer, Jake spent most of his time updating navigation charts and star maps. It was careful work that required attention to detail, but Jake loved it. Every system they surveyed, every planet they cataloged, every trade route they mapped, helped make the galaxy a smaller and safer place for everyone. Tonight, Jake was working on something different. He had received star charts from dozens of alien civilizations over the past few months, and he wanted to combine them all into one massive galactic map. The Altarian Empire had sent their latest survey data. The Zephyrian Confederacy had shared their ancient star charts that went back thousands of years. Even the military-focused Corvan Republic had provided their navigation records. Jake began overlaying the different maps, watching as the computer merged the data into a single comprehensive view of known space. The Altarian charts showed their vast empire stretching across hundreds of star systems. The Zephyrian maps revealed ancient trade routes that connected distant corners of the galaxy. The Corvan data highlighted strategic military positions and patrol routes. As the maps combined, Jake noticed something odd. Each civilization's charts seemed to stop at the same general area of space. At first he thought it might be a computer error, so he ran the analysis again. The result was the same. Every single alien star map ended at the boundary of human space. Jake leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. This had to be a coincidence. The galaxy was huge, and every species had their own areas of influence and exploration. It made sense that their maps would have different boundaries. But as Jake looked more closely at the data, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The Altarians were known as the greatest explorers in the galaxy. Their ships had traveled farther than any other species, mapping distant nebulae and uncharted star clusters. Yet their maps showed a clear boundary that perfectly matched the edge of human territory. Beyond that line, their charts showed nothing but empty space marked as unexplored region. The Zephyrians were even more puzzling. Their civilization was ancient, with star charts dating back tens of thousands of years. They had been exploring the galaxy long before humans had even discovered fire. Yet their oldest maps showed the same boundary, as if that region of space had always been off limits. Jake pulled up the Corvan military data. The Corvans were aggressive and territorial, always looking for new systems to claim and defend. Their patrol routes covered vast areas of space, and their military doctrine emphasized controlling strategic positions. But even their most aggressive expansion plans stopped at the same invisible line that surrounded human space. The next morning, Jake brought his findings to Captain Lisa Howard. She was reviewing supply reports in her ready room when Jake knocked on the door. Lisa looked up from her tablet and gestured for him to sit down. "What can I do for you, Jake?" Lisa asked. She had been captain of the Discovery for 3 years, and Jake had always found her to be fair and reasonable. If anyone would listen to his concerns, it would be her. Jake activated his portable holographic projector and showed her the combined star maps. "Captain, I've been analyzing the charts we've received from other civilizations. Look at this pattern." He highlighted the boundaries of each species' mapped territory. Lisa studied the display for a moment, then shrugged. "It's probably just a coincidence, Jake. Each species has their own priorities for exploration. Maybe they focus on regions that are more valuable to them. But Captain, look at the Altarians. They've explored systems over 1,000 light-years from their home world, but they've never sent a single ship beyond the edge of human space. The same goes for the Zephyrians and the Corvans. It's like there's an invisible wall that no one wants to cross." Lisa looked at the maps again, but Jake could see she wasn't convinced. "Jake, you're reading too much into this. The galaxy is a big place, and every species has their own way of doing things. I'm sure there's a perfectly logical explanation." Jake left the captain's office feeling frustrated but not defeated. He decided to dig deeper into the historical records. If this pattern was real, there might be clues in older documents and archives. He went to find Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's xenoarchaeologist. Elena spent her time studying ancient civilizations and their artifacts. If anyone would have access to historical star charts, it would be her. Jake found Elena in the archaeology lab, carefully examining pottery fragments from a dead civilization they had discovered last month. She looked up when Jake entered, pushing her dark hair away from her face. "Elena, I need your help with something," Jake said. He explained his discovery about the star maps and showed her the data he had compiled. Elena studied the holographic display with interest. Unlike Captain Howard, she didn't dismiss Jake's concerns. "This is fascinating, Jake. Let me check the archives for older star charts. I have navigation data from several extinct civilizations that might help us understand this pattern." Over the next few days, Elena and Jake worked together to analyze historical star charts from civilizations that had died out long before humans had reached the stars. The results were disturbing. Even races that had gone extinct thousands of years ago showed the same boundary pattern. Their maps ended at the same coordinates that would later become the edge of human space. Jake stared at the evidence they had gathered. "Elena, this doesn't make sense. How could ancient civilizations have the same boundary as modern ones? And how could they all avoid the same region of space that humans would eventually settle in?" Elena shook her head slowly. "I don't know, Jake, but there's something else that bothers me. In all my years of studying different cultures and civilizations, I've noticed that almost every species is naturally curious about the unknown. They explore, they ask questions, they push boundaries. But when it comes to the space around human territory, no one seems interested." Jake nodded. "That's exactly what I've been thinking. We interact with dozens of alien species through trade and diplomacy. They ask us about our technology, our culture, our history. But not once has anyone ever asked what lies beyond our territory. For a galaxy full of explorers and scientists, that seems impossible." As Jake and Elena continued their research, they began to realize they had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple cartographic anomaly. The pattern they had discovered suggested that there was something in the space beyond human territory that the entire galaxy was avoiding. Something that had kept dozens of civilizations away for thousands of years. And most troubling of all, no one seemed willing to talk about why. Jake Morrison decided he needed to test his theory. If there really was something that kept alien species away from the space beyond human territory, he should be able to see their reactions when he asked about it directly. The perfect opportunity came 2 weeks later when the Discovery docked at Kepler Station for a diplomatic conference. Kepler Station was a massive structure that served as a neutral meeting place for dozens of different species. The station rotated slowly in space, its multiple sections designed to accommodate the various environmental needs of different alien races. Jake had been there many times before, but this visit felt different. He had a mission. The diplomatic conference was being held in the station's main assembly hall. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss trade agreements and territorial boundaries. Jake wasn't officially part of the diplomatic team, but as the ship's cartographer, he was often called upon to provide technical information about star charts and navigation routes. During a break between sessions, Jake approached Ambassador Vexhal of the Altarian Empire. The Altarian was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 large eyes that could focus independently. Vexhal was known for being friendly and talkative, always eager to share stories about Altarian exploration missions. "Ambassador Vexhal," Jake said with a smile. "I've been looking at some of your people's star charts lately. Your exploration records are really impressive. You've mapped systems farther out than anyone else." Vexhal's eyes brightened with pride. "Thank you, Commander Morrison. The Altarian Empire has always believed in pushing the boundaries of known space. We have explored regions that others thought impossible to reach." Jake nodded. "That's what makes me curious about something. I noticed that your charts don't show any exploration beyond the edge of human space. Have your people ever considered surveying that region?" The change in Vexhal's expression was immediate and shocking. His blue skin went pale, almost white. All 4 of his eyes widened and began darting around nervously, as if he was looking for an escape route. His breathing became rapid and shallow. The Altarian Empire focuses on regions that offer strategic value," Vexhal stammered. "There are many unexplored systems in other directions that provide better opportunities for expansion." He quickly excused himself and walked away, leaving Jake standing alone. Jake was stunned by the ambassador's reaction. He had expected surprise or confusion, maybe even irritation at what could be seen as a nosy question. But he had never expected terror, And that was exactly what he had seen in Vexhal's eyes. Determined to see if this was an isolated incident, Jake approached Commander Zarath of the Corvin Republic. The Corvins were known for their military strength and aggressive expansion policies. If anyone would be interested in exploring new territory, it would be them. Zarath was standing near the viewing port, watching ships dock and undock from the station. She was typical of her species, tall and muscular with gray skin and small ridges along her forehead. Corvins were direct and practical, rarely wasting time on small talk. "Commander Zarath," Jake said. "I was wondering if I could ask you about Corvin expansion plans. Your military is always looking for new systems to secure, right?" Zarath turned to face him, her expression serious but not unfriendly. "The Corvin Republic is always interested in strategic positions that can strengthen our defense network. What specifically did you want to know?" "Well, I've been looking at star charts and I noticed that your expansion seems to avoid the regions beyond human space. Is there a particular reason for that? Those systems could offer valuable strategic positions." Zarath's reaction was different from Vexhal's but equally disturbing. Her face became rigid and her eyes hardened. She took a step back from Jake, and her hand moved unconsciously toward where her weapon would normally be attached. "The Corvin Republic has no interest in that region," she said in a voice that had become cold and distant. "If you will excuse me, I have other duties to attend to." She walked away quickly, leaving Jake with more questions than answers. Jake's third test came when he found Quindar, a Zephyrian philosopher who was attending the conference as a cultural observer. The Zephyrians were known for their love of deep conversations and philosophical discussions. Quindar in particular was famous for being able to talk for hours about any subject. Quindar was sitting in one of the station's quiet meditation areas, reading from a data tablet. The Zephyrian looked up when Jake approached, his large eyes showing interest in a potential conversation. "Quindar, I hope I'm not disturbing you," Jake said. "I was hoping to get your thoughts on something that's been puzzling me." "Not at all, Commander Morrison. I always enjoy discussing puzzling questions. What has captured your curiosity?" Quindar set down his tablet and gave Jake his full attention. Jake decided to be more direct this time. "I've been studying galactic exploration patterns, and I've noticed that no species seems to have explored the regions beyond human territory. Given the Zephyrian love of knowledge and discovery, I'm surprised your people haven't investigated those systems." The effect was immediate and startling. Quindar, who had been leaning forward with interest, suddenly went completely still. His face became blank as if someone had switched off a light behind his eyes. For several long seconds he said nothing at all. Then, without a word, he stood up, gathered his belongings, and walked away, leaving Jake sitting alone. Jake tried the same approach with several other species over the next few days. The results were always the same. The Draknari warriors, who were known for their fearlessness in battle, showed clear signs of anxiety and quickly changed the subject. The Nexian traders, who were always looking for new markets to exploit, became nervous and made excuses to leave. Even the scientific representatives from the Kepler Institute, who lived for discovering new phenomena, refused to discuss the topic. When Jake returned to the Discovery, he immediately went to find Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She was in her lab, but this time she wasn't alone. Professor William Chen, a human anthropologist who specialized in galactic civilizations, was visiting the ship as part of an academic exchange program. Jake explained what had happened during his conversations with the alien representatives. Both Elena and Professor Chen listened with growing concern as Jake described the reactions he had witnessed. "This is remarkable, Jake," Professor Chen said when Jake finished his account. "I've spent decades studying different alien cultures, and I've noticed similar patterns of avoidance, but I never connected them to a specific region of space." Elena nodded. "The reactions you're describing suggest more than just disinterest. These species are genuinely afraid of something, but they won't or can't talk about what it is." Professor Chen pulled up his own research files on his portable computer. "I've been studying cultural taboos across different species, and I've found references to something called the Forbidden Region in several ancient texts. The references are always vague and incomplete, as if the information has been deliberately censored." Jake looked at the professor's data. "What kind of references? What do they say about this forbidden region?" "Most of them are fragmentary," Professor Chen replied. "I found mentions of the Watchers beyond the Rim, and the Guardians at the Edge in different languages and from different time periods. There are also references to something called the Ancient Warning, but no details about what the warning actually said. Elena leaned forward. Jake, I think you've discovered something that goes much deeper than unusual exploration patterns. If these references are accurate, then there's been some kind of galactic conspiracy to keep certain information hidden for thousands of years. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. But why would the entire galaxy conspire to hide something? And what could be so terrible that it would scare species as different as the Altarians and the Corvins? Professor Chen closed his computer and looked at Jake seriously. I don't know, but I think we need to find out. If there's something in the space around human territory that has kept the galaxy's greatest explorers away for millennia, then we need to understand what it is and why it's there. 3 days after returning from Kepler Station, Jake Morrison received an encrypted message on his personal communication device. The message was brief and mysterious. It simply said, "If you seek answers about the Forbidden Region, meet me on Terminus 7. Come alone. Tell no one. A friend." The message was signed with an ancient Zephyrian symbol that Jake didn't recognize. Jake showed the message to Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Professor William Chen. They agreed that it could be a trap, but they also realized it might be their only chance to get real answers about the mystery they were investigating. Terminus 7 was an abandoned world on the edge of Zephyrian space. The planet had been evacuated decades ago when its sun began showing signs of instability. It was the perfect place for a secret meeting, because no one had any reason to go there anymore. Jake convinced Captain Lisa Howard to make a detour to Terminus 7 under the pretense of conducting a geological survey. The Discovery approached the dead world carefully, scanning for any signs of other ships or hidden dangers. The planet's surface was covered in empty cities and abandoned settlements. The Zephyrians had left in an orderly fashion, taking most of their belongings with them, but the empty buildings still stood like monuments to a civilization that had moved on. Jake took a shuttle down to the planet's surface, accompanied by Elena and Professor Chen. They had insisted on coming despite the message's instruction to come alone. Jake was glad for their company because the empty world felt eerie and unsettling. They landed near what had once been the planet's capital city. The buildings were tall and graceful, designed in the flowing style that Zephyrians preferred. But without any inhabitants, the city felt like a ghost town frozen in time. Following the coordinates included in the message, they made their way to an old library in the center of the city. Inside, they found an elderly Zephyrian waiting for them. He was very old, even by Zephyrian standards, with deep lines in his face and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many years. "I am Dr. Kethvar," the old Zephyrian said in accented but clear English. "I have been waiting for someone like you to ask the right questions. I sent you the message because I believe it is time for the truth to be told." Jake stepped forward. "Dr. Kethvar, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We've discovered that no alien species explores the space beyond human territory, and when we ask about it, they become afraid. Can you tell us why?" Dr. Kethvar sat down on one of the library's stone benches and gestured for them to join him. "What I am about to tell you is knowledge that has been suppressed for 20,000 years. Most of my people have forgotten, and those who remember have been sworn to silence. But I'm old, and I believe the time for secrets has passed." The old Zephyrian looked out through the library's large windows at the empty city beyond. 20,000 years ago, the galaxy was very different. There were many great civilizations, more advanced than anything we have today. The greatest of these were called the Precursors. They had technology that seemed like magic, and they could travel between stars as easily as you walk between rooms. The Precursors were not content with exploring just our galaxy. They wanted to go beyond, to see what lay in other dimensions and other realities. They built machines that could tear holes in space itself, allowing them to step into realms that no one had ever seen before. Professor Chen leaned forward. "What happened when they used these machines?" Dr. Kethvar's expression became grim. "They found something terrible. In their experiments with other dimensions, they accidentally created permanent doorways that could not be closed. And through those doorways came creatures that should never have existed in our reality. These creatures were not like anything that had ever lived in our universe. They fed on consciousness itself, draining the minds and souls of every living being they encountered. Worse, they could not be killed by any weapon that the galaxy possessed. They were made of something that existed between reality and dream. Elena felt a chill run through her. How did the galaxy survive if these creatures were so powerful? The precursors realized their mistake too late to prevent it, but not too late to contain it. They gathered the greatest fleet that had ever been assembled. Ships from every civilization in the galaxy joined together under precursor leadership. Millions of vessels carrying the bravest warriors and the smartest scientists from hundreds of different species. The fleet traveled to the region where the dimensional doorways had been opened. Their mission was to find a way to destroy the creatures or at least trap them so they could not spread across the galaxy. It was the most important military operation in galactic history. Jake asked the question he was afraid to hear answered. What happened to the fleet? Dr. Kethvar was quiet for a long moment before answering. They disappeared completely. Every ship, every crew member, every piece of technology. It was as if they had never existed at all. The galaxy waited for word from them, but no messages came. No survivors returned. Then, 3 days after the fleet had vanished, something impossible happened. A single precursor ship appeared at the edge of the battle zone. But this ship was different. It looked ancient, as if it had been traveling for thousands of years instead of 3 days. The crew of that ship were still alive, but they had been changed by their experience. They were aged far beyond what should have been possible, and their minds carried knowledge that terrified even the precursors themselves. They brought with them a message that would change the galaxy forever. Professor Chen was taking notes as fast as he could. What was the message? Dr. Kethvar closed his eyes as if reciting something he had memorized long ago. The message was this: the creatures cannot be destroyed, but they can be contained if the right conditions are met. A species will come that can resist their influence and keep them trapped. These beings will arrive when the galaxy is ready, and they will settle in the region where the doorways were opened. They must not be interfered with or questioned. They are the key to keeping the darkness at bay. The message also contained specific instructions. All exploration of the forbidden region must cease immediately. All records of the creatures and the dimensional doorways must be destroyed. Future generations must be taught to avoid that area of space without being told why. The price of disobedience would be the destruction of every living thing in the galaxy. Jake felt his world shift as he understood what Dr. Kethvar was telling them. The humans. The message was talking about humans, wasn't it? Dr. Kethvar nodded slowly. The precursors described the species that would come. They would be curious and aggressive, unafraid of danger. They would settle in the exact region that the galaxy had been forbidden to explore. And most importantly, they would have minds that the creatures could not touch or corrupt. After delivering their message, the precursors systematically destroyed every record of the dimensional experiments and the creatures they had released. They eliminated all traces of their advanced technology and then disappeared from the galaxy forever, leaving only the warning behind. Elena stared at the old Zephyrian in shock. Are you saying that humanity's expansion into space was predicted 20,000 years ago? That we were destined to become guardians against some cosmic threat? Dr. Kethvar stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dead city. I am saying that the galaxy has been waiting for 20,000 years for humanity to arrive. Every species knows the old stories, even if they don't fully understand them. We know that humans are special, that they serve a purpose we cannot comprehend, and we know that disturbing them or interfering with their mission could doom us all. Jake looked at his companions and saw his own shock reflected in their faces. They had come seeking answers about a cartographic mystery, but they had discovered something far more significant. Humanity wasn't just another species exploring the galaxy. They were the solution to a problem that had threatened all life for 20 millennia, and most humans had no idea. The journey back to the discovery was quiet. Jake Morrison, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and Professor William Chen each struggled to process what Dr. Kethvar had told them. The idea that humanity had been predicted and was serving as cosmic guardians seemed impossible, but it explained so many things that had never made sense before. Once they were back aboard the ship, Jake went directly to Captain Lisa Howard's office. This time he brought Elena and Professor Chen with him. The evidence they had gathered could no longer be dismissed as coincidence or imagination. Captain Howard listened to their account of the meeting with Dr. Kethvar. At first, she was skeptical, but as they presented more evidence and showed her the historical patterns they had discovered, her expression grew serious. "If what you're telling me is true," Captain Howard said, "then we need to understand exactly what humanity is supposed to be guarding against. We can't protect something if we don't know what the threat is." She authorized a covert mission to the edge of human space. The Discovery would conduct what appeared to be routine stellar surveys while actually investigating the boundary region that other species avoided. If there really were dangerous creatures trapped somewhere beyond human territory, they needed to know where and how. As the ship traveled toward the edge of human space, Professor Chen began studying human settlement patterns with new eyes. What he found was disturbing. Human colonies weren't randomly distributed across their territory. Instead, they formed a complex three-dimensional grid that seemed designed to monitor and control specific regions of space. "Look at this," Professor Chen said, showing his analysis to Jake and Elena. "Every major human colony is positioned at a point that allows maximum sensor coverage of the surrounding space. The placement is so precise that it has to be intentional, but I don't think the colonists themselves realize it." Elena studied the data. "It's like humanity unconsciously built a surveillance network around something they can't see. But who or what guided them to make these choices?" Jake had been thinking about that same question. Maybe no one guided them directly. Maybe humans are just naturally inclined to make the right choices for this situation. Dr. Kethvar said the precursors described a species that would be perfect for this job. Professor Chen pulled up psychological profiles of different human populations. That raises an interesting point. Humans are the only known species that actively seeks out danger instead of avoiding it. Most aliens run from unknown threats, but humans investigate them. Most species avoid risk, but humans seem to be attracted to it. "It's not just psychological," Elena added. "Human exploration patterns are completely different from every other species we've studied. Aliens explore for resources or territory or knowledge. Humans explore just because something is there and they want to know what it is." As the Discovery approached the boundary of human space, Jake used the ship's advanced sensors to scan the regions beyond. What he found defied explanation. The sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies that couldn't be natural phenomena. "Captain, you need to see this," Jake called out. Captain Howard joined him at the sensor station, and together they studied the readings. The gravitational signatures were enormous, each one the size of several star systems. But they weren't moving in the chaotic patterns of natural objects. Instead, they maintained precise formations and regular orbits that suggested artificial construction. "Whatever those things are, they're not natural," Captain Howard said. "They're too big to be ships, but they're clearly artificial. And they've been there for a very long time." Elena ran additional scans and found something even more disturbing. "The structures are dormant now, but I'm detecting residual energy patterns. These things were active recently, maybe within the last few years." Professor Chen had been conducting his own analysis of human biology and psychology. What he discovered added another piece to the puzzle they were trying to solve. "I've been comparing human DNA to the genetic records of other species," Professor Chen said. "Humans have several sequences that don't appear anywhere else in Earth's evolutionary tree. These sequences seem to control brain chemistry and psychological responses." Jake looked up from the sensor readings. "Are you saying that human DNA has been artificially modified?" "I'm saying that humans have genetic markers that suggest outside intervention at some point in their evolutionary history. The modifications are subtle, but they affect exactly the traits that would make humans ideal for the role Dr. Kethvar described." Elena examined Professor Chen's genetic analysis. The modifications enhance curiosity, reduce fear responses to unknown phenomena, and increase determination in the face of overwhelming odds. It's like someone designed humans specifically to confront things that other species would run away from. As they continued their investigation, the Discovery's sensors began detecting new activity from the massive structures beyond human space. Energy readings that had been dormant for millennia were beginning to increase. "Captain, something is happening out there," Jake reported. "The structures are showing increased energy output. It's like our presence has triggered some kind of response." Captain Howard studied the sensor data with growing concern. "Whatever those things are, they know we're here. The question is whether they see us as a threat or as something they've been waiting for. Elena monitored the energy patterns from the structures. The activity is spreading from structure to structure, like they're communicating with each other, and the energy levels keep increasing. Professor Chen made a connection that chilled everyone on the bridge. If Dr. Kethvar was right about humans being guardians, then maybe our job isn't just to stay in this region of space. Maybe we're supposed to actively monitor and maintain whatever system the precursors built to contain those creatures. Jake realized that their investigation had reached a critical point. We can't turn back now. If humanity really is responsible for keeping something dangerous contained, then we need to know what it is and how to do our job properly. Captain Howard made the decision that would change everything. Set course for the nearest structure. We're going to find out exactly what humanity has been guarding against, and we're going to learn how to do it better. As the Discovery moved beyond the boundary of human space for the first time in galactic history, the energy readings from the ancient structures continued to increase. Whatever had been sleeping in the darkness for 20,000 years was beginning to wake up, and humanity was about to come face to face with their true purpose in the galaxy. Jake watched the sensor displays as they approached the unknown. He thought about all the human colonies spread across their territory, all the people living normal lives without knowing they were part of a cosmic defense system. Soon, that ignorance would end, and humanity would have to accept the responsibility that had been waiting for them among the stars. The Discovery crossed into the forbidden region beyond human space, and immediately, Jake Morrison knew they had entered a place that was fundamentally different from the rest of the galaxy. The stars seemed dimmer here, and the normal background radiation that filled space was strangely muted, as if something was absorbing the energy from the universe itself. As they approached the first of the massive structures, its true size became apparent. It was not a ship or a station in any conventional sense. Instead, it appeared to be a hollow sphere large enough to contain an entire solar system. The surface was made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. My God, Captain Lisa Howard whispered as she stared at the image on the main screen. What could possibly require a prison this large? Dr. Elena Rodriguez was monitoring the sensor readings from her station. Captain, I'm detecting something inside the structure. The readings are unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not matter or energy as we understand it. It's something else entirely. Jake studied the structure's design and realized what they were looking at. It's a containment system. The entire structure is designed to keep something trapped inside. Look at these energy patterns flowing across the surface, and they're not random. They're forming some kind of barrier. Professor William Chen had been analyzing the structure's composition. The material this thing is made from doesn't exist in our periodic table. It's built from elements that shouldn't be able to exist in normal spacetime. The precursors must have created entirely new forms of matter to build these prisons. As the Discovery moved closer to the structure, something began to happen. The dark surface started to pulse with a faint light, and the energy patterns flowing across it became more active. Whatever was inside had noticed their presence. Elena's instruments began registering strange readings. Captain, I'm detecting some kind of psychic emanation from the structure. It's trying to make contact with our minds. Jake felt a strange pressure in his head, like something was trying to push its way into his thoughts. But instead of fear, he felt only curiosity. He wanted to understand what was trying to communicate with them. Suddenly, images began flowing into their minds. Not words or sounds, but pure concepts and emotions that bypassed normal language entirely. They saw the truth of what the precursors had accidentally unleashed upon the galaxy. The creatures inside the prison spheres were not from their universe. They existed in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on consciousness and reality itself. They were beings of pure entropy, creatures whose very existence worked to unmake the ordered universe that supported life. Jake saw images of worlds where these creatures had broken free in other realities. Entire civilizations reduced to empty shells as every thinking being had their consciousness drained away. Stars going dark as the fundamental forces that held the universe together were slowly consumed. But he also saw why humans were different. The creatures could influence most forms of consciousness, turning fear and despair into weapons that made their victims easier to consume. But human minds operated on frequencies that the creatures could not touch. Human determination and refusal to give up created a kind of mental static that blocked their influence. Professor Chen understood the implications immediately. That's why the genetic modifications were necessary. Humans needed to be made even more curious and determined than they naturally were. The creatures use fear and doubt as doorways into minds, but humans were designed to be almost immune to that kind of manipulation. Elena was studying the containment systems more closely. The prison spheres are slowly failing. They were built to last for millennia, but even precursor technology has limits. The barriers are weakening, and the creatures inside are testing them more frequently. Jake realized what this meant for humanity. We're not just supposed to guard this region of space. We're supposed to maintain and repair these containment systems. Every human colony, every space station, every exploration ship is part of a network designed to monitor and strengthen the prisons. Captain Howard was trying to process the magnitude of what they had discovered. How many of these structures are there? Jake checked the sensor readings. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They form a three-dimensional shell around human space. Each one contains creatures that could destroy entire civilizations if they ever broke free. As they continued to study the prison spheres, the creatures inside became more active. The psychic pressure increased, and Jake could feel them testing the barriers of the containment systems with growing desperation. Elena's readings showed that the creatures were learning and adapting. They're studying our minds just as we're studying them. Each time they encounter human consciousness, they learn a little more about how we think. They're looking for weaknesses in our mental defenses. Professor Chen made a disturbing connection. That's why human expansion into space accelerated so quickly once we developed faster-than-light travel. The creatures were becoming more active, and humanity unconsciously responded by spreading out to strengthen the containment network. Jake looked at the tactical display showing human space. Every colony world, every military base, every research station was positioned to provide maximum coverage of the prison spheres. Humanity had unconsciously built the perfect surveillance and maintenance network for a threat they didn't even know existed. We need to return to human space and report what we've found, Captain Howard said. Humanity has a right to know what their real purpose is in the galaxy. As the Discovery began its journey back to human territory, Jake felt a strange sense of completion. The mystery that had started with unusual star charts had revealed humanity's true destiny among the stars. They were not just explorers or colonists. They were the guardians of galactic civilization, standing watch against threats that could unmake reality itself. Elena was already planning the research that would be needed. We'll need to study the containment technology and learn how to maintain it properly. We'll need to train humans to monitor the prison spheres and respond to any signs of failure. Professor Chen was thinking about the broader implications. We'll also need to decide how much to tell the general population. Most humans are already doing their job without knowing it, but knowledge of the threat might make them more effective guardians. Jake understood why the other species of the galaxy had maintained their silence for so long. They weren't avoiding the subject out of fear for themselves. They were protecting humanity's ability to do a job that no other species could handle. The creatures could corrupt and influence any other form of consciousness. But human minds were uniquely resistant to their power. As Earth appeared on the Discovery's sensors, Jake thought about all the humans living normal lives across the colonies. They went to work, raised families, explored new worlds, and built the future they wanted for their children. They had no idea that every day they lived free and safe was because they were unconsciously part of the galaxy's greatest defense system. The galactic map ended at human space because beyond it lay something so dangerous that even knowledge of its existence could weaken the mental barriers that kept it contained. The other species of the galaxy didn't dare ask questions because they understood that humanity's ignorance was part of their strength. But now that ignorance would have to end. Humanity would need to accept their role as cosmic guardians, protectors of not just their own civilization, but of all life in the galaxy. It was a responsibility that would change everything about how humans saw themselves and their place among the stars. Jake Morrison had started his investigation as a curious cartographer who noticed an odd pattern in star charts. He was returning home as one of the first humans to understand that humanity's greatest adventure wasn't exploring the galaxy. It was protecting it from threats that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality. The map ended at human space because that was where the real work began.